Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email us, Team Mosso at the1916company.com for purchase, pricing, and availability questions concerning this watch. Today, we're discussing a lovely little launch from 2022. This is the Grand Seiko SBGX353, 34 millimeters in diameter in steel. It's from the Elegance Collection. 9F 61 quartz caliber, the Cadillac of quartz movements. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. Proudly made by hand in Japan. So it's 34 in diameter, 11.2 thick, and then from lug tip to lug tip, 40.7 with an 18 millimeter spacing between the lugs. This is a very traditional dress watch size. I would say that it looks fine on my wrist, but if your wrist is any bigger than my 16 centimeters circumference, the watch is going to look a little bit dwarfed by your forearm. So let's consider this a unisex option right up until you get beyond 16 centimeters, at which point you're just going to probably want a bigger Grand Seiko watch. But for guys, for gals, for those who prefer vintage watches, this is definitely the go. Taking a look at the strap, it's a lovely and unconventional cut of alligator, as we have these broad ovoid and round scales in dark blue with a semi-gloss finish, a folded edge, a monotone stitch, buttery soft calfskin on the bottom. These Grand Seiko straps are magic. I don't know how they get unbroken in calf and alligator leather to be this soft, but it is wonderfully appealing. The buckle, like the watch, is in steel, all of high polish. You can see it features the vintage Grand Seiko logo, and you will find that in a few places on the watch, of course, because this Elegance Collection is inspired by the original Grand Seiko 3180 of 1960, so it's a throwback to the 1960. You can see the sapphire crystal looks like a vintage plexi. We've got these lugs that project out dramatically and far from a traditional round case. We've got little strap tool holes outboard because Grand Seiko is one of the few luxury class watch brands that still expects you to swap straps prolifically and use a strap tool to do so. The lugs are broken out. You can see stepped quite dramatically from the case. The entire case polished by hand against a spinning tin plate, the so-called Zaratsu finishing done on Zalitz machines. Taken about 3 years to master, this is equivalent to Swiss black polish, only instead of being on a tiny part in the movement, the whole case is hand finished. We've got a push-down crown, 30-meter water resistance, a conical and double-stepped bezel. Skyflake, as this dial is sometimes known, as it's very similar to the famed Snowflake, but it is blue. Of course, up in the Shinshu Watch Studio, the Grand Seiko Spring Drive and Quartz 9F series are assembled, and that is a cold place, and the snow piles up in Japan. And so the image of the blown snow and its blue tinge in winter has been recreated on this dial that requires multiple and involved steps in order to craft on top of a metal base. So you get this lovely ridged and toned sort of blown drift effect that looks very natural and organic, very true to the source material. Grand Seiko dials, and not just the base, but the dial furniture as well, among the best in the mainstream luxury class. I recommend that you compare them favorably to Rolex. Rolex achieves quality by relentlessly mechanizing the process, whereas Grand Seiko does it by slowing things down and finishing and applying these parts by hand. You could see that the hands themselves have razor-like facets along their profiles, and that the same can be said of the indices themselves. Cut and finished by artisans using diamond-tipped micrometric milling tools. This is their full-time gig, making these little parts. We have a genuine fired steel, counterweighted Lancet-style seconds hand, and then everything is placed and caulked by hand. Taking a look at that seconds hand, I can stop it precisely and set the watch directly against a reference time to the second. Caliber 9F, don't write off all quartz as just being a battery-powered watch. Now, you can get a battery-powered watch in a Happy Meal, or you can get the 9F, and it can be a generational product. So the 9F61 is part of the 9F family that's been the flagship of Grand Seiko Quartz since the early 1990s when it debuted, accurate to 10 seconds a year in a world where 15 seconds a month is quartz standard. You saw the hacking function. The battery has life of about 3 years in between replacements. It is thermocompensated, so even if you do go and visit Lake Suwa and the area around the Shinshu Watch Studio, you will find that even in the cold, the watch keeps time unerringly because of thermocompensation, which is an upscale and often excluded feature on lower-end quartz watches that you will find on these 9Fs. There's also a quartz trimmer that allows the watchmaker who services this over time, and it is serviceable by a watchmaker, to make sure that he adjusts for the quartz crystal's drift over decades. It is a 9-jewel movement that is assembled by 2 separate artisans before it leaves the factory. One focuses on general assembly, the other focuses on a date complication when one is present. Because this one doesn't have a date complication, it is single artisan, but you're probably surprised to know that these are hand-built and hand-tuned quartz calibers. They have other virtues. In addition to a lot of traditional mechanical watchmaking with the drivetrain and the 9 jewels, they feature a twin pulse system that applies torque in 2 different pulses to these very long hands. And this is an uncommonly long handset for a quartz watch, where battery energy can be drawn down very quickly by inefficient stepping motors. Also, there's a backlash adjustment system here that ensures the seconds hand always stops precisely on the index. That's a very sophisticated system comparable to what Rolex used to do on the Oyster quartz, where they had a separate Swiss lever escapement just to govern the movement of the seconds hand. This is luxury quartz at its finest, and it is Japanese-made watchmaking at apex. Reach out to Team Mosso at the 1916company.com for purchase and pricing details.